So then I clicked on the X button to make it go away, but then it was a link to another ad, and when I tried to cancel that, another window came up and it was this. Dude, what the bro? What does this mean, dude, bro? What the bro?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for the final comic book review of the week. I had decided I was just going to take off doing the Hellfire Gala stuff. It's not really all that enjoyable. I'm going to talk with Doc again on Sunday anyway. This week in X-Men. Why even do those reviews? But I said to myself, if Planet Size X-Men is important enough, there's something there to talk about, I would review that one. So this should be my last individual review of Hellfire Gala. I'll do the This Week in X-Men stuff with Doc where we wrap this stuff up, and I'll probably do an after action, wrap up the entire event with Perch. But there's enough interesting stuff happening in Planet Size X-Men from Jerry Duggan, Pepe Larraz, and Marte Gracia that we need to talk about it. There are some execution issues here leading up to and during the rollout of what happens in Planet Size X-Men. Turns out it's a pun. It's what they're telling us. And there's certainly some hints leading up into this. This should feel a lot more exciting as it's happening. And they've, in my opinion, really dropped the ball. But I am going to recommend this one. This is a 3.5-star comic. The art is fantastic. From Pepe Larraz, he's still got it. Still disappointed he's not the one illustrating Inferno, but whatever. He's going to be on Jerry Duggan's X-Men series for at least a couple issues, so people are excited before they roll out a new artist. But just leading up to what we get here, this should have been so much more impactful. There's no stakes raised until we get to this big moment. And if you do not know this, Mars has been colonized by the end of this comic book. There's a lot of symbolism in here that I'm going to talk about, and overall, the idea of this is cool. We know that something happens on Mars when we read House of X Powers of 10. That's where the mutant chimeras were being created and all kinds of stuff. We're adding another layer. The reason that Mars is being terraformed and claimed is for other reasons than what we had been told in House of X Powers of 10. We will get to that here in a second. This is the second best issue so far of Hellfire Gala. Certainly the most impactful. This is way more impactful than Hellions, which I maintain is better than this, because everything was in character. It kind of flowed with the natural progression of the story before it, and that's kind of the big issue. Let's get into this comic book, talk about the details. So in 10 of Swords, at the very end, Arakki had been restored, had come back through the breach, arrived back on Earth with 1 million war-hardened mutants in tow. Over centuries have been battle-hardened and evolved and have all these crazy abilities, and they're very dangerous. We have not heard about these mutants since then. There was one issue, where Krakoa and Arakki were going to merge. They decided they didn't like each other anymore. They talked it out, and they decided, we're going to do our thing, and we're going to do our thing. No one said anything about these mutants since. Why haven't they mentioned this stuff? It creates an enormous problem. They finally tackle it here, but they could have been raising the stakes and the importance of what they're about to do here by driving up the danger involved in the Arakki mutants that are sitting there. But they never mentioned it. And then when they get in here, you have Magneto talking to, I think it's Iska the Unbroken or whatever that stupid name is. And they're talking about, Reed the Destroyer, one of the Arakki mutants, enslaved a distillery in Japan. Well, that doesn't sound very nice. Is this happening all over the world? Why is this the first time we've heard about this? After that, we get a meeting between Scott and Captain America, I guess, at the old, campus of Charles Xavier's School for the Gifted. And they're talking about the millions of mutants that have arrived in the South Pacific, and the entire world's on DEFCON 1. Well, why haven't we heard about this? Why haven't we heard about it in an X-Men book? Why haven't we heard about it in Avengers? Why haven't we heard about it anywhere else in Marvel Comics until this very moment? They could have been building up and rationing the tension, building suspense, buying into the danger factor. The entire world probably should have been reacting to these mutants and the danger that they portrayed. And it really would have made all the stuff that we're about to talk about really impactful. The suspense would have been there. Are they going to find a safe place for the Arakki mutants? Is there going to be World War III? Something like that. And the entire opportunity was wasted because they never mentioned it again. And that's disappointing, unfortunately. So the Arakki mutants, finally they acknowledge that they are a threat. People are aware of them. And once Scott tells Captain America, look, listen, we're going to do something. You need to be at the Hellfire Gala to find out. And Captain was like, well, I wasn't going to go, but I'll be there now. And that's, kind of leads up to when we see is it the reformation of the Illuminati? They all said hello, didn't they? It seemed like they were pretty palsy with each other, at least in some of the earlier issues of the Hellfire Gala. And I got to say something before I move on. The sequence of the release of these comics, as far as this event, suck. This should have been the very first issue. This would have been much more exciting, especially if they had built up to it. But we're seeing references to what happens here before this issue. We're seeing things presented out of order. People are congratulating new members of the X-Men team before they've officially been introduced. It's been a clusterfuck, if I'm being completely honest, on Hellfire Gala. There's no rhyme or reason when they're putting things out, in my opinion. Now that I've got that ran over, let's talk about another thing besides not ratcheting up the tension, not mentioning that these mutants pose a clear and present danger to the entire world and that they need to be dealt with. Something has to happen. That's finally mentioned here. It's in the comic book that it actually happens. You don't raise tension and create stakes that way. You don't create suspense that way. It's only in this comic book. This should have been built up for months. Another problem with the sequencing is it's not just with the way that they've rolled out this event, and it shouldn't be an event. This planet-sized X-Men thing should have just been its own thing. They could have done something really cool to build up to this and had nothing to do with Hellfire Gala, where you had the whole world mobilizing and almost going to war leading up to this big, momentous occasion, and it would have felt really important. And one of the reasons it doesn't feel important is the sequencing. It's, for the most part, it's a clip show. It's just 3 days ago, there's a conversation. 2 days ago, there's a conversation. 4 days ago, there was a conversation. This morning, there was a conversation. And it's just people talking around stuff. This should have all been leading up to this big event or this big comic book. They're not really connected. It doesn't really flow. It's just this happens, then this happens, and then this happens. It's not well constructed, in my opinion. It's happening. And in my opinion, the execution itself also kills the impact of what should be an enormous occasion. This is big stuff. This is a game changer in the Marvel universe, in theory at least. And just the sequencing of events leading up to Mars essentially being claimed by the mutant nation and being inhabited, it's lackluster. It's not really exciting. It doesn't put you on the edge of your seat. You're just seeing things happen. It's scene. Jerry Duggan's not a good writer. He's not a good X-Men writer. Just putting that one out there. Now that we've got a lot of the things that inhibit this from being a really exciting event, that make it a 3.5-star comic instead of like a 4.5 or a 5-star comic, because that's probably what the implications and the art itself deserve. It's just the delivery that doesn't really work out. Let's get into the Terraforming of Mars. And essentially, this is like all the Omega level mutants and a couple of them from Morocco get together, and that's what it takes to terraform Mars. It's all of them, I think, except Legion. Iceman's there, but I don't remember him actually doing anything. I think he just talks to people. But even Iceman's there. But he doesn't really use his power. But you can see why within the story they're heavily hinting that the mutants themselves almost see themselves as like godlike. And when you see the terraforming or the creation of this new colony on Mars, you can see why they think they're gods. It took God 7 days to create the heavens and the earth. Here it takes the mutants, I don't know, about 25 minutes maybe? Like I said, they do bring in a mutant from Morocco. This mutant was able to cut their hand, and next thing you know, the entire planet has oceans. This is after, I believe it's Magneto and, was it Vulcan and Hope? They're doing something with the core of the planet to kind of get things moving as far as the lava and all the stuff in the core. Obviously, Storm shows up. We get an atmosphere, and then there's another mutant from Morocco that apparently puts all the things in the soil that you would need to grow stuff, like the nutrients and minerals that you would need to grow things in the soil. So the mutant nation was able to accomplish in about 25 minutes what it took an entire week for God to do. I'm imagining that this was all laid out like this for a reason. But once again, it's the sequence. It's just like this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And they could have just been building up the stakes. While this is going on, the first shots could have been fired in some type of theoretical war between the nation of Arakki and like the rest of the planet or something. And they have to terraform Mars immediately and get them out of there before they cause World War III. And like the stakes couldn't be any higher. But it's none of that. You're just like, oh, that's neat. Okay, so that's what that mutant's going to do. I wonder what that mutant's going to do. Oh, now I get it. And that's essentially what it is. But Mars is now terraformed, and we get to the big reveal, the problem that needed to be solved that no one knew about because they never mentioned it prior to this issue. We get essentially the entire nation of Arakki, the land mass, all the mutants, everything goes flying through this. It's not a wormhole, but another mutant created something that sucked them through there and spit them out on Mars, and we get the island is on Mars. It's out in the middle of the ocean. And there's a big crater that's turned into this lake, and we get these buildings. I don't even want to call them, but apparently that's where it's like an area for diplomacy for the cosmos. And I imagine this is going to play heavily into Al Ewing's S.W.O.R.D. We'll get to that in a second. And this part is like off limits. Arakki gets the rest of the planet, which ought to be very hostile considering who they are and what they've been through. But they're supposed to leave Lake Hellas alone in diplomatic ring because that is where people are going to go and negotiate like peace and all that stuff in the galaxy. Seems like a pretty big concept. That could be cool in the future. I think Al Ewing will use that to its fullest benefit. Now let's get to the last big reveal. This was really strange. As if Jean Grey hasn't done enough bad things by manipulating people's mind, she decides that she is going to give birth to an idea in Jamie Braddock's head, Monarch, whatever you want to call him. I think it's Jamie Braddock. And she gives birth to the idea, and I guess he takes it literally. And he ends up like pregnant and birthing a second S.W.O.R.D station out of his stomach. It was really gross, really strange. The way that they needed to do it. I don't know how he lived. I guess the healing garden guy was there fast to fix him up, but this was really strange. But in the end, we get a second S.W.O.R.D station orbiting Mars. Like I said, I imagine that's going to play heavily into what Al Ewing is doing with S.W.O.R.D. So by the end of this, a lot of things have changed. Arakki and the Arakki mutants are not on Earth anymore. They're on Mars. Mars has officially been claimed and terraformed and colonized by the mutants. That ought to cause World War III, if we're being honest. If the Arakki mutants themselves didn't do it, them claiming Mars for their own so they can go out there and create new hybrid mutants and everything probably should start World War III. Just thinking about it, I don't even know how they get to the end of the Hellfire Gala. Anyone that has a gun that's at the Hellfire Gala should be shooting mutants right now. They are clear and present danger. Look at all the crazy stuff that they're doing right now. But we have a second S.W.O.R.D station orbiting around Mars. We've got a diplomatic area. Think about Battlestar Galactica. Remember that when they did the reboot? And there's that one area in space where everyone goes to and they negotiate. I guess that's what's on in Lake Hella. So there are some game changers that happen in this comic book. Unfortunately, there's no tension. There's no suspense. There was no lead up to this. Why is it associated with Hellfire Gala? I have no idea. There were much more creative, impactful, and exciting ways to get all these people together to witness this event and what happens, and for them to take in the grandeur of it all and the ultimate power of the mutant nation of Krakoa. But admittedly, it is exciting. Things have definitely changed. This certainly doesn't change my mind about reading Jerry Duggan's X-Men. I will read the first issue, I will review it, and likely discard it. And I'm just going to be reading Inferno, Hellions, and probably Wolverine in the future. But some cool stuff here. The execution was just off. This story, the events in here deserve to be a 4.5 or a 5-star comic. Severely impactful. Great art. but the execution was lacking. That's why it's a 3.5 star. I recommend it. I don't highly recommend it due to the nature of the storytelling. But if you are a fan of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, this Reign of X era following Dawn of X, this is must-read stuff. The game has changed, people. Unfortunately, Jerry Duggan was the architect, and it just didn't roll out all that well, in my opinion.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.